Welcome to another episode of Note the Past. What a treat to have Gary Silva as our guest today. I was fortunate to spend time with Gary a few weeks ago talking about this podcast. It was like talking to an old friend about music. So much passion. Me as an enthusiastic bystander, Gary as an accomplished drummer, having played with several legends known to us all. Our time together was way too short because, of course, Gary had to get to another gig. Gary has had a remarkable career across many musical genres, which include Chicago style blues, country, rock and roll, jazz fusion, and metal. He's been nominated for a Grammy, for three San Francisco Bay Area Music Awards and three Norbe Awards. Listen to this partial lineup of legends Gary has played with: Elvin Bishop, Luther Tucker, Albert Collins, Big Mama Thornton, Mark Naftalin, Ron Thompson, John Lee Hooker, Mike Bloomfield, Buddy Guy, Lydia Pence, and Annie Sampson. The list just goes on. These were Gary's heroes. His adulation for them did not go unnoticed. In fact, in an interview with Gary back in 2020, he said, there'd be times I'd be sitting in a back room with Hooker, with Lowell Fulson and Charlie Musselwhite, and I'd be back there with them and I'd say, I should leave, man. And Mark Naftalin took me aside and told me, the reason you're here is that you keep your mouth shut, you show respect, you're modest, you're humble, and everybody picks up on that. I was in heaven. I couldn't believe I was playing with them. So that's how he became everybody's drummer. Gary, welcome. So great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Well, before we get into talking about the blues connection, your blues connection, let's talk a little bit about growing up in Salinas Valley. I was particularly intrigued when I saw that.
Yeah, I grew up in a little town called Gonzales in the Salinas Valley, and my family, my grandmother, my grandparents were there. My parents grew up there. They knew each other in grammar school and in high school. And made their living there. And I was, it was almost looking back. It was so much fun. It was like, and this isn't a put down by any means. It was like Mayberry RFD kind of. It's like, you knew the policeman, the town policeman, and everybody knew everybody's families and parents and histories and so forth. So that being said, you couldn't get away with much. You had to, if you were mischievous, you had to be very, subtle about it. But word got around quick. So you had to.
That's great. And you were also a friend of. You grew up with Randy Vosti, who was kind enough to connect us.
Yes, Randy Vosi got us. In fact, he hooked us up, and one of my very first band, Randy Vosti, Milton Vosti, and Ricky Rubo, and myself started a little band, and we started practicing and learning songs. And I remember when Randy was learning how to play the guitar and learning chords and all of that, and our parents were all very supportive. That was really key. They were when the Beatles came out. That's when we, God, how could you not want to start a band? And
sure.
So, we did.
Did you listen to much radio when you were growing up, AM or FM?
That's all there was. That's all there was to do, was to listen to records and listen to the radio. And back then, that was before FM radio. It was all AM radio. And right. I think it was KDON in Salinas was the main, top 40 radio. Then there was KEWB out of San Francisco, KYA we listened to. I forget, there was one in Monterey the call letters escape me. But yeah, so you had that 2.5 minute song format, and then and they would repeat the songs. But and I was lucky because I had a lot of I was the youngest in all of the families, and my grandmother's house was next door, and she always had the teenagers, and my cousins had stacks of records, and they knew all the latest dances, and they were just listening to records constantly, and I was exposed to rock and roll at a real early age, and knew how to dance, although I can't dance now. But, yeah, it was very good for me, and
you moved to Marin. How old were you when you moved to Marin?
I was in high school. We left my sophomore year. Spent a year in Tehachapi, of all places, and my dad was transferred in his job, and he decided, yeah, this is not for me. So he moved. He got transferred. He said, I want to go to Marin County. So, and that was a blessing for me. I was exposed to, at the height of the San Francisco Sound, and the Jefferson Airplane, Moby Grape, Quicksilver, you name it, all the bands, all the Fillmores were happening, Winterland, concerts everywhere, outdoor concerts in Golden Gate Park. I was going to San Rafael High, and I was just so green. I was this naive kid from the valley, and these kids were very sophisticated. Marin County being a wealthy county, where they'd seen it all, and I remember asking me, hey, you have a car, right? And I said, yeah, and they said, well, let's go to the Fillmore tonight. Let's, so-and-so is playing, it's a Thursday night. I said, well, it's a school night. So, what's wrong with you, and so, yeah. And that's how I was. So I soon learned it. Yeah.
How did you talk a little bit about how the drums sort of came to you, but how did you pick drums as an instrument?
My mom said as a child, I was in diapers, she said, and I would pull out pots and pans and get spoons and sit on the floor and bang away. And she'd go outside and let me bang away. And she said it was just real instant, it was just something that I was attracted to. And I later, I remember before taking lessons in school, my grandmother was making, she used to make tamales and tortillas in this little room and sell them to the stores and to the public, and that's how she had, made extra money supporting the family and stuff after my grandfather died. But so outside of back then, when you made tamales and stuff in those days, you used lard, and so there was all these empty tins. I remember the Armor Star lard tins. I was out there one day stacking them up, and I said, I thought to myself, well, that sounds like a drum. And I got some sticks and started hitting these, and it sounded like a snare drum to me. And so I started banging away, and then I really got into it. I remember I rigged up a way to wire one of these tins, these lard tins, to the handlebars of my bicycle. I could ride my bike with no hands around the neighborhood and bang on the drum, and so, yeah, probably annoyed the heck out of the neighbors, but it's something. And then when I got into the 4th grade, I took drum lessons. My oldest brother, Bob, gave me my first pair of drumsticks and a practice pad that he tried out for music in school, but he got more into sports and stuff. So he said, here, you can have these. And so I had sticks and a practice pad, and I was off. And so
were there any influences, early on, or as you were becoming more accomplished? Did you have any drummers that you were particularly influenced by?
I was, my dad was a big jazz fan, and he used to go to all the very first Monterey Jazz Festivals, he and his friend, Ed Whalen. And so much so that they became friends with Jimmy Lyons, who was the producer of the Monterey Jazz Festivals. And they worked for the state of California, the Department of Corrections, and they were able to talk Jim into saying, they said, hey, you know, when the Monterey Jazz Festivals would be over on Sunday, they'd say, there's got to be these guys that are going to be driving through the area, and in the Salinas Valley there was the Soledad prison, and so they said, how would you think they'd like to play, you know, on their way home? And the state will pay them, the check is good, you know, and if they have just an hour, play for the inmates for an hour, and most of them said, yeah, oh, we'd love to. And so they'd leave Monterey on their way back to LA and or wherever, and they'd stop in and play for the inmates. And they started that program and got it going. And so, but yeah, my dad, he turned me on to like Buddy Rich, you know, all the great drummers. It's just phenomenal.
That story sounds a little like a la Johnny Cash, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Joe Morello with the Dave Brubeck was a good. I was a huge fan of Joe Morello, Buddy Rich, of course, countless others. I mean, so I got into jazz and the jazz drummers, and then when the Beatles came out, of course, then it was all about Ringo. You know.
Yeah.
Wow, and still one of my favorite drummers. So very musical. You know.
Hey, just as an aside, being a drummer, you know, I've read some things about the Beatles over the years. Sometimes, you know, Ringo's style has sort of been considered, I don't know, a little vanilla. How do you rate him as a drummer?
You know, I rate him very highly because he's very musical. He plays what's appropriate. It's easy now to put him down, you know, and because basically he set the standard. He you know, I've seen videos of where they've had probably a dozen drummers, fantastic drummers of today that are current, that would just, you know, just rave about his styles, and they'd be sitting behind a set of drums just like Ringo's, and they would play Ringo parts, and I mean, from the guy from Green Day to the guy that plays on Jimmy Farrell's Questlove, you know, guys like that. You know,
yeah. Wow.
Dave Grohl, they're all huge Ringo fans, and they should be, you know. Most people weren't playing drums until they heard Ringo, you know, play. And I give him a lot of credit. That's what got me started. I wanted a set of drums because of Ringo Starr, you know. And
well, I'm clearly not a musician, but his drum solo on Abbey Road to me is just fantastic.
And you know, it's the musicality. He knows when to lay off, or he'd add certain things that were just beautiful, you know. I mean, you know, like George Harrison, you know, something, you know, if you listen to some of his fills and delicate, how to play delicately, but then when you see him playing on the roof of Abbey Road, you know, on that classic, on their last performance, where they're all bundled up and the wind's blowing, and the people on the streets are looking up, you know, where's this music coming? They knew it was the Beatles, but I mean, he's rocking, you know.
He really is.
You know, I mean, he could do it, you know. But
you know, Gary, you were talking about a difference in style there, your own. I think I mentioned to you in some notes that I sent.
Yes.
I was particularly taken by, I guess there was a all-star birthday party for Nick Gravenice, and that had a certain style to it. And then your softer style with Harvey Mandel at the Peacetown concert in Petaluma.
Right.
How was that for you to play those different kinds of styles? Or is that the right way to describe it?
Yeah, it is. And I love that. I love the, you know, being, you know, able to play those different styles. I've had students where I've just said, you got to be versatile. Versatility is key. You know, I remember having a drum student. We'd be playing shuffles, or we'd be playing rock beats, or even jazz beats. And then I would say, okay, today we're going to tone things down. I'm going to show you how to play country music. And I had this one student say, I hate country music. Really? Well, you're going to learn how to play it, because if you want to be a professional musician and you want to work, you got to know how to play it all, you know. And so I showed him, you know, and I played some things for him. And then all of a sudden he was struggling with it. And I said, not as easy as it sounds, huh? It sounds so simple, but yet, you know, yeah, and you got to hold back, you know, you can't just thrash, you know. And so, yeah, anyway.
You have described your style. I read in an article that you said, people notice me by my beat. What do you mean by that?
Well, particularly the shuffle. I've had shuffles that and there's different styles of shuffles, and it's basically you're
yeah,
doing that sort of beat, but there's variations of that particular beat. But evidently, when I had met Luther Tucker, who was my mentor and exposed me to all these great blues artists, we started playing, and I started, you know, I'd listened to records, and I was a good listener, I think, and I absorbed it all. And I remember hearing, you know, listening to drummers particularly, and I picked up on the shuffle and the blues shuffles, and all of a sudden I got, you know, offers, and I got people saying, man, you know how to play that shuffle. People would hire me to hear that beat, you know.
Wow.
I remember playing the Monterey Jazz Festival, and I did like a 2-hour show, and then got off the stage, and I was walking off the stage, and this great guitar player, blues guitar player, Pee Wee Creighton, stopped me, and he says, hey, he says, I just was listening to you, and I was blown away. He said, would you like to back me? You know, I'm going up next, and I'd like you to back me. And I said, well, I don't know much of your material. I know who you are. I know some of your material. And I said, don't you have a drummer? And he says, yeah, I do have a drummer, and he's here, and he's going to get paid, but I've already told him that I'd like to use this guy on. And he said, okay, fine. You know, and so.
Wow. What a compliment.
I said, what? You know, so. Okay, so I did, and so yeah, I remember playing just a few years ago with Bill Champlin, and we did some of the funk stuff that he does, and you know, and did a couple of the Sons of Champlin, you know,
yeah,
some stuff that he did, and then we got done playing, and they wanted us back for an encore, and you know, he's in front of me sitting in the organ, and he spins around. He goes, what do you want to do, man? He goes, what can we do that we know, you know? And I didn't say a word. And Peter Welker, this trumpet player who played with Cold Blood and many other bands, Peter says, how about a shuffle? And Bill says, yeah, let's play a shuffle. So we did this shuffle, and the crowd went nuts, and we got done playing it. And Bill was sitting facing his organ, and he spun around in his stool, and he looks at me, and he goes, that's the best shuffle I've heard in years.
Oh,
wow.
Said,
wow, coming from Bill Champlin. I said, you know, and I'm not tooting my own horn here, but it's just sometimes you just have to, I guess I'm doing something right, you know.
Yeah. Well, you had a number of those occasions where you were doing something right. You've talked a bit about, you know, this morning we were talking a little bit about your friend who unfortunately passed away, and how he had been instrumental in having you play with the New Riders. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Rusty Gauthier, fantastic singer, could play anything with strings, mandolin, violin, guitars, banjo, fiddle. He was just an amazing singer, amazing musician. Anyway, they were looking for a drummer, and my friend Gary Vogensen recommended me to him. And Rusty didn't know who I was. You know, he said, "Yeah, if you say you can do it, okay, sure." So he sent me some tapes and sent me some stuff to learn. And I only had a couple of weeks to learn. So I was, and I'm taking it real seriously, writing notes to each song, listening and over again. And so I went on my way to the gig. I hit some traffic and I was a bit late to the gig. And when I pulled up to the front of the club, Rusty was standing outside waiting for me. He'd never met me. And I pulled up and he goes, "You're Gary." I said, "Yeah, I'm Rusty." And he says, "Come on, let me help you load the drums." So he helps me load my drums. I set them up and we didn't really have time to talk. So we just started playing and he was smiling, nodding, and we took a break and we were getting ready to come up for our second set. He goes, "Man, you did your homework." I said, and I was like, I thought I'd made mistakes and I didn't think, that I played all that well. I was hoping that he'd forgive me for some of the things that I didn't feel comfortable with. But he says, "No, you did fine." And so I did the gig and then I figured, well, I'll probably not get another call from them. And then I got a call the next day and he says, "Hey man," he goes, "I've got some gigs lined up. You want to play, and I'd like you to, be a part of this." And so here I was playing with the New Riders of the Purple Sage, and there's different variations of the Riders throughout the years. And originally it started with, Spencer Dryden was one of my favorite drummers. Right. In Airplane, Spencer Dryden and Jerry Garcia, and a bunch of players that were just in the San Francisco groups, the part of the San Francisco sound. But
that must be just an exhilarating feeling when you get a call back after playing the first time and being asked to play some gigs.
It is, yeah. It's a great feeling. It's like, wow, I guess I did something right, I've had some, I've got callbacks, from Murray Muldar, from Michael Bloomfield,
Yeah.
Michael was great. I love that guy. He was hilarious. He was a genius in so many ways, even more in more than music. He was just a brilliant mind. And poor guy, man. It just breaks my heart that he died so young. Untouched.
You and I talked about Michael the last couple of weeks ago, and what some of our listeners may not know is that Michael played the lead guitar on Bob Dylan's "Like a Rolling Stone."
That's correct.
And it's just, and you had the opportunity to meet with him and play with him. Wow.
Yeah, laugh with him. He was hilarious, and he was, just a great, sweet guy. Just a real sweet guy. He was funny. I remember I was playing with Luther Tucker. We opened up the show. We're on a double bill, and we opened up the show. We played our set. We got done. We were ready to pack up, and the club owner comes up and says, "Hey, Michael's not here, so you guys may have to play the second set. Can you get started?" So we started to play the second set. And we played it. We were about the middle of our second tune, and Michael comes walking up on stage, and he sees Luther and goes, "Hey, Tucker, how you doing?" Because they knew each other from Chicago.
Yeah.
And Luther, for those of you who don't know, also a brilliant guitar player, amazing. At 16 years old, he was playing with Little Walter, Walter's band. He was a harmonica genius. And he had to get a note from his mom. He was 16 so that they could take him on the road,
Wow.
But anyway, getting back to Michael walking on stage, "Hey, Tucker, how you doing, man?" Tucker says, "Oh, great, man." So Luther starts to take his guitar off and hand it to Michael. And Michael says, "No, man, you're Luther Tucker. There's a piano over here. I'm going to play the upright piano." And so Michael walked over to the piano and started playing the piano and counted off some tunes. We just jumped right in. And then he eventually came and, picked up on Luther's guitar. But yeah, he played with Paul Butterfield's blues band. Bob Dylan said that he was probably the greatest guitar player he'd ever heard,
that's a great segue to your blues connection. It seemed like, and what I've read is that you were drawn to the Chicago blues pretty early on. And was that personal interest or the actual musicians that you met?
I it was the sound, the music itself, it really grabbed me, and it just soulful, and the voicings, the incredible singers, and yet there was a bit of this excuse me for the glasses, but a bit of in a way some raunchiness, in some cases, but it was almost so bad. It was cool. It was so good. It was like, it was authentic. It was real. It was emotion. It was just pure emotion.
Yeah.
And that part really, really struck me. And I thought, man, you don't have to be this, accomplished musician from, Manhattan School of Music, or all these fantastic music schools. You can just be some street guy that learns and who's self-taught, and but there was really some it hit me, and then to I used to go see them at the Fillmores and stuff like that, Winterland and stuff like that, and I would go to Winterland and the Fillmore, and I would sit there, and to me it was like going to class. I would go hear the different people, and I would go there, and I would sit there, and my friends would go, "Hey, aren't you having fun?" I'm going, "Yeah, I'm soaking this in," and eventually I got to the people that I would go see, I ended up playing with or meeting,
That's just incredible.
Yeah.
How I had read where the Paul Butterfield Blues Band was pretty much involved in bringing the Chicago blues sound to San Francisco. Is that fair?
Without a doubt. Absolutely. Yeah. Without a doubt. Not just San Francisco, but to the entire nation. A lot of people didn't know who these names were, and I was with Elvin Bishop's band for almost 10 years. I knew Paul Butterfield. I didn't know him well, but I knew Paul, I knew Michael, and Mark Naplin I was with for years. And there's guys that were the Butterfield band that I'd played with, and they, each and every one of them, told me that Bill Graham, after hearing the Butterfield band, he said, where did you learn this stuff? And he goes, Chicago, man, like, from who? And from all these old cats, man, that are there. Well, are they alive? He goes, yeah, and they're looking for work, you got to hire them. And so Bill Graham said, well, okay, give me some names, and so they were definitely responsible for exposing, the American public, for kids particularly, to the blues, and plus providing these people with work. And so
you played with so many of the bigs. Great story you told me about Luther Tucker, and I think you lived with him for a period of time. And
yes,
he's the one. I'm not sure whether you said, Gary, that he introduced you to Elvin Bishop, or you had known Elvin Bishop when he walked in.
Yeah.
To when you were playing with Luther Tucker, I think.
Yeah. We lived in the same town. There was in Marin County, this little town called Forest Knolls, and there was the only bar out there. And Elvin would come into the bar occasionally. And this is when Elvin was riding high on the Fool Around and Fell in Love, that whole scene.
Yeah.
And he would come in with his musicians sometimes, the whole band, from rehearsals, and they'd hang out in the bar. And then when I got Luther a room where I was staying, we became roommates, and we started a band, and we started playing at this little club. And I remember the night that Elvin came walking in, and he looks at me and he goes, Luther, what are you doing here? Hey, Elvin, and he says, I live here. He goes, you live here? Where? Like right down the street, and so I live right up the road, and so Elvin went and got his guitar, and he sat in with us, and we played. And after the bar closed, he said, come on, let's go to my house and let's jam. Let's play some more, So that was the beginning of our friendship, and we got to know each other real well.
You told a great story about one time where you felt you hadn't been playing very well, or it was one gig with Elvin, and where you went up and after it, you apologized or something. Relay that story again, what he said to you. I just think it's touching.
Yeah, I'm really hard on myself. I'm really critical of my own playing. I'm really, my standards, I have standards I like to maintain and stick by. And I didn't feel like I had a good night. And I hadn't been playing with Elvin's band. He and I had been friends and stuff, but when you became a member of his band, it was like all business. He had the front man and he was like, oh shucks, come on. And he'd pop open a Budweiser and come on, let's have some fun. And yeah, but when it came down to brass tacks and when we get back, into the dressing room, hey you guys, blah, 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 he'd tell us what's wrong. And I knew I'd had a bad night. It happens, and I walked up to him and I said, hey, Elvin, man, I'm really sorry, man. He goes, stop. He goes, no excuses, man. I don't want to hear any excuses, man. Don't ever make excuses. Don't ever apologize. He goes, just think about it, work it out, and don't let it happen again. He goes, but I don't want to hear any excuses, and don't give excuses, because you're better than that, man. Just, don't be so self-deprecating, you should just, just learn from it. You learn from your mistakes and just try not to let it happen again. So end of conversation.
Wow. I've done a lot of work on leadership in my career, and that's as good an example of leadership, I think, that I've ever heard.
Oh, you know what? Another story quickly. I remember we were playing at Lake Tahoe, Harrison Lake Tahoe, and we were playing, and you did 3 shows a night. So we got done with our first show, or maybe it was our second show. We walked back to the backstage, and the bass player and I, Michael Fly Brooks, he was my all-time favorite bass player. We're sitting there, and he's pouring a drink. We're having, pouring ourselves a drink, and there was some food there, and the whole band is there, and Elvin comes walking up to Fly, and we're facing the table. He's next to me. We're getting our little food and our drinks together. Elvin comes walking up to us behind us. And he puts his arms around the both of us, and he goes, "Hey man, how you guys feeling?" We look at him like, "Okay, how's your backs? How's your back? How's your back, man? How's your back, Gary? How's your back, Fly? Your back's okay?" And we looked at each other and we looked at him. We go, "Yeah. Why do you ask?" He goes, "Because you're carrying the whole damn band. That's why." And he turned around and goes, "Hey, you guys in the front lines, get your act together, man. You got to."
Wow.
And I thought that was hilarious. That was a hilarious way of putting it. How's your back? Because you're carrying this whole damn. These 2 guys are carrying the damn band, all night long. He told us, "Come on, you guys." So.
Speaking of your bass player that you adored, you also talked to me about the importance of the drummer and the bass player relationship and what it means for the band. Amplify that a bit.
You have to lock in. You have to become one. There can't be any variation. Like when I hit the kick drum, boom. That's when he hits the note, and it's identical. It's accurate. It's exact every time. So if he's going boom, 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 my kick drum's going boom, 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 boom on that note.
Yeah.
And the time has to be perfect, and it can't vary. And when it's right, it's right, and it becomes effortless. It's magical. You're just looking at me, and he's just, I'm nodding, and I'm looking, I'm going, man, it's just like, this is heaven, and we had such a tight, close relationship. People would come up to us and say after shows, and they would say, "You guys are like one." I'm a musician, and you guys were so exact, yet soulful. It wasn't mechanical. It was very soulful with feeling, and that's another thing you have to have is feeling, it's not just the mechanics. And they would say, it was like your beats were just perfect on time. And just, every time, every song, well, thank you. That's a hell of a compliment. And I remember playing with Fly, and I'm playing and I'm thinking like, man, I feel like I can hear his thoughts, you know, and I'm playing, you know, and so I say to myself in my own head as I'm playing, I'm thinking, can you hear what I'm thinking, Fly? You know, and I didn't say it out loud, but I'm thinking this to him, like, you know, I wonder if Fly, can you hear me? And you can hear what I'm thinking? And Fly was playing, and he looked over at me and he goes, like,
no kidding.
Nodded, man, and I went, God. And then, yeah, I swear to God. And then there was times where, you know, those moments that you hear people talk about, and the reason, some of the reason that you do this. I mean, there's literally times where I was playing where the band, everybody, it was so good, and I knew my playing was effortless, and I was having a good night, and everybody was on. And there was times where I would feel like I was elevating, and there's my head. I'm above my own body. I'm out of my body, and I'm looking at the band, and I'm going, man, this sounds good. Who's playing the drums, you know? And I'm looking, and I know this sounds a little too, you know, whatever, you know, but there's a spirituality, and those moments are what, man, that feeling, you know, that's such a high, you know, that no drug or alcohol can give you. It's just, and you go, I want to achieve that. So you want to achieve that feeling every time, you know, and
that's a wonderful analogy, and being out of yourself, being able to look at yourself. I mean, how,
I swear,
what an experience. What an experience. Hey, you know, you mentioned, I think, in Marin County, the little bar, was that the one that was called the Sleeping Lady? I think it is.
No, that was in Fairfax. The little bar, it was called the Lodge, simply the Lodge. But the Sleeping Lady was a tiny little place, and then they knocked down a wall, and they moved, and they expanded the building, and that's where we had the Blue Monday parties.
What is that? Describe that a little bit, because that was big, wasn't it?
It was huge. It became huge. It started out. It was an organic little restaurant in during the height of hippiedom, you know, and I was playing with Luther Tucker. We were playing at Rancho Nicasio in Marin County, and which is now owned by Angela Straley and her husband Bob Brown. Angela's a great Texas blues singer. But anyway, we were playing. Mark, we were playing out there. I was playing with Luther Tucker's band, and Mark Laughlin showed up. And Mark says, he goes, "Hey Tucker, I thought, hey Mark, you want to sit in?" "Yeah, I'll sit in." You know, he goes, "Yeah, I thought I'd check you out." He goes, "I heard you had a hell of a band now." You know, he goes, "Yeah, they're pretty damn good." So after we got done playing, Mark Laughlin came over to me and he says, "Hey Gary," he goes, "I'd like to get your phone number," you know, and I said, "Sure." And so I gave him my phone number. He goes, "I'm going to be starting this series on Monday nights. The Sleeping Lady's going to give me every Monday night for a month to see if this takes off. We're going to be playing some blues, you know, and just call it a Blue Monday party." And I said, "Okay, sure." So I didn't think he'd call me, but the following day he calls me and he says,
Wow.
"Okay, you know, this Monday we're going to start. We're going to play, you know, and we're going to have special guests." And he says, "I've got a guitar player, Ron Thompson, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with him." And I said, "I've heard of him, but I've never really, you know, heard him or played with him." And he says, "And do you have a bass player, you know, that you'd like?" You know, I said, "Well, I only know one right at that time. You know, I didn't know very many bass players, but the guy that I'd been playing with regularly was Luther's bass player. His name was Byron Sutton, who's no longer with us, but." He says, "Okay, yeah, well, it's the four of us. We'll just jam and we'll run through some stuff." And we did. We started playing, and Ron Thompson was incredible. I just went, "Oh my God, this guy!" You know, he was a maniac. I mean, just maniacal but good and tasteful, and his standards were very high. You did something wrong, he'd glare at you, you know, and he'd go, "Oh, don't want to do that again," you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, that became a big thing. We did some live recordings on YouTube. If you go on, there's some recordings of me as a very young man. I'm on stage with Luther Tucker, Charlie Musselwhite, Mark Naftalin, Bobby Murray, who was Etta James' guitar player for many years, and Ron had just left the band to pursue his own thing, and that's another story. But yeah, there's a couple of YouTube videos. If you go on,
check them out.
Yeah, YouTube, you'll say Charlie Musselwhite, Luther Tucker, Bobby Murray. And if you click on, you'll see what it was about. It's incredible. And talking about Ron Thompson, at one point, Ron said, "I'm going to start my own band, and I want you and Byron to be in the band. It's going to be a trio, you know." And I said, "Well, how's Mark? Does Mark know about this?" You know, because basically Ron was stealing his rhythm section, you know.
Yeah.
He's already got gigs booked up, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, we rehearsed for about 2 months. We were driving into the city. Ron lived in the city, and Byron and I lived in Marin. And so we kept going into the city. We got everything tight. We got it down. And lo and behold, the Sleeping Lady, Ron told the guys at the Sleeping Lady, I'm starting a trio. I got my own band, blah, blah, blah. So they said, yeah. Well, they gave us a Saturday night. So we went and performed. We played on a Saturday night, and we were tight. And so 3-piece band and high energy, but blues and very authentic. And we played. And at the end of the night, as we were packing up, this guy walks up to us and he goes, "Hey," he goes, I don't know what I just heard, but that was incredible. He goes, "I'm with Tacoma Records, and I'd like to sign you guys to a record deal." We're like,
wow.
We're like, yeah, sure, get out of here, you know. Anyway, here's my card. I'll call you or call me, you know, and I'd like to record you guys. And you know, Ron's going, yeah, right, this guy's full of it, you know, we're packing it. So I get a call from Ron, and he says, "Hey, this guy's not kidding. He wants us in the studio. I'm going to the studio in Mill Valley next week, you know." And so we went, "What?" Yeah. So we did, and we started recording, and turns out the guy was pretty shady. He had a reputation, you know. I don't want to get into it or even give his name out. And but yeah, there was an issue there where there was a lawsuit involved.
Ooh.
You know, so yeah.
What was it like, Gary, playing like the Sleeping Lady and then playing the Fillmore? I mean, what were those experiences?
Well, the only time I ever really played the Fillmore was towards the end, when it was before it moved down back to the original Fillmore. It was in Carousel, and I'd only just done some sitting in at the Fillmore. Winterland, I played, and I played with Luther, and Luther introduced me to. We went to go see Muddy Waters at Winterland, and we went backstage, and you know, Tucker knew everybody. They saw, "Oh man, Tucker, you're playing, you're sitting in," you know. And Tucker says, "Hey man, can my drummer play, man?" "Yeah, if you say you can play, man, yeah." So I got a chance to get up there and play, you know. And so, but it was incredible. The crowds were receptive. They were huge. They were blown away, you know. They got this white audience, you know. They were used to playing clubs in Chicago with entirely black audiences, you know, little clubs. But yeah, they were riding high. They were really very, very pleased. But yeah, there's definitely you know, differences in you know, in some of the venues. And then when you go back to Chicago and play, people in Chicago know what's real and what's not. You know, they know if something's, that's not it, you know. And it was nice to when I played back there with bands, that people would come up to us and say, "You guys know how to play the blues. That was real. That was incredible," you know. And so thank you.
Yeah, that's what you told me, that boy, they could pick out people who knew how to play faster than lightning.
Absolutely. Right away. And they'd let you know. They'd let you know. But yeah, so I was lucky enough, you know, to Luther, you know, he turned me on to Big Mama Thornton. I played with Big Mama. I played with Albert Collins because of Luther. I played with Otis Rush. You know, and playing with Luther, Elvin got a chance to hear my playing. And then after a few years, Elvin, asked me, God called me and said, hey, I got a couple of weeks in Tahoe, man. I'd like you to play, So I said, okay. He gave me a list of songs I had to learn, and I learned them, studied. I went to a rehearsal, one rehearsal. I was on a Sunday evening, and on the following Tuesday, we were our 2-week run.
Wow.
And so we got there, and I was nervous. I didn't know all the guys yet. And he'd start a song, we'd start playing a song, and then he'd stop in the middle, and he'd go, nothing wrong with that. Okay, let's move on. Wow. And so that was really cool.
Yeah.
And, yeah, he's very encouraging. He didn't drive at that time, didn't have a driver's license. So we drove up to Tahoe in my car, and he had a stack of cassettes that he wanted me to listen to, everything from, he was really into gospel music, the Swan Silver Tones, and, when Sam Cooke was still, singing, before he got into soul music and rhythm and blues. But yeah, he had a vast variety of tapes and music. And when I told him I was playing and recording with Percy Mayfield, who wrote "Hit the Road Jack" for Ray Charles, he says, "You're playing with Percy Mayfield?" I go, "Yeah, we're recording." And he's going, "Damn, man!" He goes, "If it was up to me, people wouldn't be called Christians; they would be called Mayfieldians." And so he goes, "I love Percy Mayfield," and he knew all of Percy's songs. "River's Invitation," "Someone to Love." He knew them all, and I was like, "Wow, Elvin has a vast knowledge of not only music, but he's a brilliant mind." I mean, he won the National Merit Scholarship when he was in high school, and he chose. They said, "You won the award. Pick a college. We're paying." He says, "Okay, the University of Chicago." And he said, "The reason I picked the University of Chicago is late at night where he lived in Oklahoma, at midnight, this classical music station would turn over and play blues.
Yeah.
Listen to blues all night, and he fell in love with the music.
Wow.
So, I'm going to Chicago." So
yeah,
but yeah, there's and I've been fortunate enough. I've had somebody just brought me this here. This is one of the Bammies that I won with Ron Thompson.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's the award. And speaking of, real quickly, a plug here, the album that we were nominated for, this is it's called Resistor Twister.
Yeah, a little more to your left. Yeah, perfect, right there.
And it's not really available anymore, but this is the one that was nominated for the Grammy.
Oh, wow.
And there's a movie that's going to be coming out, a documentary on Ron Thompson. When we started the Resistors, we didn't have a name, and we were trying to pick a name, and he was going to call it Little Ronnie and the Rejectors or something, And I said, "No, man, it sounds too much like the Rejects,
Yeah.
He says, "Man, why are you so resistant? Why are you so, why are you, resisting?" And I said, because I'm a resistor. And he went, "Resistor? Thompson and the Resistors." So
I love it.
So that's how it became. But anyway, he passed away a couple of years ago. And so they've done a documentary, and I'm in the documentary as being one of the original Resistors, a 3-piece band. So this group of students in San Francisco State are making a documentary on.
Oh, great!
So anyway, so they sent me this T-shirt.
Oh, keep resisting.
Keep resisting, yeah. And then this is the T-shirt.
Wow! Is there a way to get one of those T-shirts, Gary?
I'll try to get you one. I think I can get you one. Yeah. And
Great.
so, but the movie is still being worked on. His birthday's on July 5th, and sorry. And so sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, they're working on the movie still. They wanted to have it out. Ron's birthday is on July 5th. They wanted to release it on the 5th, but apparently it's not ready yet. So
Well, keep me posted. I'll keep emailing you so that I can get a sense from you as to when it's out.
Please
One of the things that you've talked quite a bit about in our time together today, Gary, is the camaraderie and respect that you had. Your stories, obviously, with Elvin and Luther and Ron, clearly point that out. And certainly, what Mark Naftalin told you about what you meant playing with those people. Speak to that camaraderie a bit.
There was nothing like it. I had never been, growing up in the Salinas Valley, there wasn't a huge Black community, and it was all, Mexican, Hispanic, Central American, mostly migrant farm workers, but and in Marin County, there's virtually hardly any, there's much of a Black community at all. So the people that I were playing with were mostly in the East Bay and San Francisco and other parts. And I was very respectful, I was humble, humility was very important to me, and not being a jerk and a loudmouth. And I got to know these people. They were very funny. They were very talented. They accepted me. I was, they kept asking me to play for them. One guy, you got to get this guy. He's playing. Oh, great. Okay. Or people would come up to me at blues festivals. Are you playing drums? I would be in the house band, Mark Naftalin and I, and, Mark's key band. We would be backing up all these different artists. Are you playing drums? And I go, yeah. I'm like, oh, good. Okay, good. It made me feel good,
Sure.
And then we would become friends, and we got to know each other real well. I mean, Mark and Luther turned me on to so many people, and Elvin too. I got to record with. We had Dr. John on our album on Big Fun and Alligator. I played with Dr. John, Irma Thomas, the Queen of New Orleans, music, and Percy Mayfield, Roy Brown. Names that most people wouldn't recognize, but just incredible an experience. And I look back and I go, man, did I really? God, that's right, I did play with that guy. Somebody sent me a list of the people that I played with once.
Wow.
I said, wow, I don't remember that. But.
Well, Randy, I called him Vosti. I think you said Vosti. But he sent so much great material for me to sort of research you and watch you play a bit. It was very kind of him to do that.
Oh, that's fantastic.
When you think about your career, and I hope this question doesn't come off as maudlin, but are there any highlights or anything that struck you in your gut or bring a tear to your eye when you think about this long, amazing, wonderful career that's still going on, I might add?
Yes, it is. Yeah. In fact, I have a gig after this I have to drive to. Playing some of the people that I got to play with, Norton Buffalo, some of the people that are no longer with us, Stu Blank, who was an incredible piano player, performer. Norton Buffalo is probably one of the best harmonica players in the world.
Wow.
Honestly, incredible. I lost a friend who Randy knows, a friend in Gonzales, who died of cancer just a couple of years ago, short years ago. And I remember we were living together in a house in a kind of a communal living house in the Salinas Valley. And John got drafted, and then I got drafted. And I remember the night before, the very last night we were together, John was an incredible guitar player. Randy can attest to this. He was probably the best in that whole valley. Phenomenal guitar player, super talented. And I remember him dropping me off, and this was I was saying goodbye. He was going to get on the bus at Fort Ord the next morning and be off. And he says to me, "What are you going to do, man? What are you going to do here?" I said, "John, I don't know, man. I don't know what I'm going to do without you, man." And he said, he goes, "Get out of here, man. Don't, go back to Marin County, man. That's, that's where the music is, man. There's no music here. Who are you going to play with? He goes, you're good enough, man. You're that good. You need to go back there and and just start playing, man. You'll get a gig, So, and so I took his advice. I packed up the next day and drove off and showed up at my mom's house and said, "I'm back," And so I said, "But not for long." I said, "I'm just going to be here for a short period of time." And then I found, roommates and found my place, in Marin and started playing. And I started playing. I answered an ad at a record store, local band looking for a drummer. I wasn't playing with anybody. So I said, okay. So I call these people up. "Yeah, come on over." So I went, I started playing. And they weren't very good, and I said, well, it's a start. It's somebody to play with, And downstairs, the way the house was set up, it's a street level, but kind of in the basement, was this road manager who was working for Van Morrison. And one day I was packing my drums up, and he comes walking up, and he goes, "Hey, are you the guy that's playing, with these guys, this band? Are you the drummer that's been playing with them, the last few weeks?" I go, "Yeah." He says, "What the hell are you doing, man?" "You're too good to be playing with you. I've been listening to you, man." He goes, "I work with Van Morrison, blah, blah, blah."
Wow.
So he turned me on to some people. He goes, "Here I'll get with some people, and so.
That's an amazing story. Well, Gary, like you said, you're headed to another gig here shortly. You play several gigs a month. What keeps you going?
Just the desire, and it's therapeutic for me. It's the physical activity, it's the mental, it takes me to another place. I don't look at the crowd. I'm not one of those guys that's looking at the crowd and smiling and all that stuff. I always look at and I don't even realize that I'm doing it, but I'm looking at my cymbals. I always look at my cymbals, or I look at my drum, and I know where I'm going next, and I'm absorbing and I'm feeling the song, the individual song and the individual music. And it's very important to me. I take it very seriously. It's not a hobby, it's my life. It's my trade. It feeds my soul. And it's very, very important to me. I take it very seriously. It's like it's like my religion. It's like, it's something that I hold in very, very high regard. It's kept me alive. It's kept me through thick and thin, through times of, when I've lost friends and John passed away, and that really broke my heart. I have his guitar. And his landlady wants me to sell it. He left it to her, and she said, "I don't know what to do with it, so I'm going to be selling it here shortly."
Yeah.
He wants a Fender Strat, burgundy metallic. I have one.
Wow. Go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Well, getting back to the one story, and I'll make it quick. One of the funny stories that I had, a couple of funny stories, is one time I was at the Sleeping Lady, and there was a group of all these older black blues musicians, and Mark Naplin was there, and I was in the other room, and I heard them talking, and they're saying, "Man, where does he?" And I hope this doesn't sound like I'm tooting my own horn, but I'll never forget this, because I was very shy, and that was right around the time when Mark told me, "You belong here. You don't leave. When we tell people to get out of the room, we're not talking about you. You're one of us. And so I remember this one time I heard him talking about, where is he from? How does he know how to play this stuff? It's incredible. Man, I couldn't believe that he knew how to, where that was going, and blah, 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 and what is he? Well, he's not white, he's not black, and I'll never forget this. One of the older black guys says, "He's a white Negro." you know. And so, well, I took that as a compliment. I said, thank you, you know. So and they all laughed. Yeah, there he is, you know. And I walk in and I was embarrassed. You know? But another funny story, I was in Japan with Elvin Bishop. We were hanging out with this professional baseball player, Brad Leslie. He's from Modesto. He was playing, he had just won the Japanese professional baseball all-star game. He was the winning pitcher, big guy. And so we're outside about 3 o'clock in the morning in the Empress Hotel in Tokyo. And these gentlemen, these three Japanese gentlemen come walking out and pretty inebriated, and they recognize Brad Leslie. They call his nickname was Animal, but in Japan they call him Animal-san. And so it would be like walking around with Joe Montana, you know, during when the 49ers, when he was playing with the Niners,
right.
Super Bowls. So they see Animal, they see Brad, they go, Animal-san, oh, they come running over and they're like, oh man, you know, they're pulling out, you know, and Brad's going. So he's signing stuff for them, you know, and then, arigato, you know, and he's going, hey, wait a minute. He goes, it was me and Fly Brooks. He says, stop. He goes, don't insult my friends. You're insulting my friends. And they went, oh. And at the time I had a mustache, I had black hair. And so Brad looks at, he's looking at them and he points to me and he goes, Keith Hernandez, son. And so they're handing me their autograph book. So I'm signing Keith Hernandez. And they look at Fly and he looks at Fly and he goes, Johnny Bench, son.
Oh my God.
So they're like, so Fly signing Johnny Bench. So these guys went home thinking they got,
That's a great story.
Anyway, yeah. So.
That's a great story. Well, listen, thanks for coming on today. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to research about you and to have this conversation, and frankly, to continue to stay in touch, which I will do. I'm looking forward to the documentary.
Yes.
And looking forward to hear about your continued journey.
Thank you. And I'll try to get you a t-shirt.
Yeah. And if anybody, would like to click on the Note the Past icon in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll be notified of future, hopefully great discussions like the one we've had today with Gary Silva. Thanks so much, Gary.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.